Hello, this is Lottery 248. Tonight's problem is that... No, it's today. But anyway, greetings. This time it is going to be much more punctual than ever because this live forum is also a sequel to the previous episode relating to the cashless society. So it is enough talk about the prequel, but let's begin immediately. So what I'm talking about is regarding the money, how we can destroy a central bank. In this regard, we are going to talk about how the money, the intrinsic value of the money, and then how it has value, how people will not want the money, or how people will. So let's get it started with the beginning of this area, which is speaking about the human greed. Even for myself, often I wanted to have money because money potentially means power. When you have power, you have enough money for that matter that everyone wants. You can control the world because everyone wants money. But in today's society, the world economics, money, which is fiat money, has no intrinsic value. Why? Because it is a fiat money. The government can issue money at any time they want. Also, I need to set up down the noise cancelling to make sure my voice is going to be properly recorded. When I wanted to earn money, you must first earn the money that has value, that people want. For example, Bitcoin. Bitcoin is not a government issued fiat money. It is a digital cryptocurrency that is decentralized. In the beginning, no one wanted it because it has no value of usage. And today, if you want anonymity, you might want Bitcoin. That is why Bitcoin is now popular, and to a certain extent, governments in the world wanted to control Bitcoin because of the anonymity Bitcoin can ever achieve. But the Bitcoin itself is not sustainable because of the flawed design in the blockchain, which is being talked later. Now, let's go for the second point. As per the Harry Kissinger, which is spoken about, if you control money, you control the world. Because of the human greed, right? First of all, controlling the entire money, which means you have to control every single form of money in the world in order to control the world. Imagine you wanted to control a money, but everyone would just switch into another. Now your money is worthless. How is the control? How does this work? And now go through the Venezuela problem, because they have the hyperinflation over time and they have already knocked out the zeros for a while. For example, last time 10,000, 50,000 reform for once, and then go to the million Bolívares, have slashed the zeros by 6 of them, which is 1 by 1 million, the newer version. Now we are talking about 100 to 500 already. So, what happens if the government control the inflation, which is out of control? People will never want the money. So today's problem is that the money is not backed by anything else, no intrinsic value. So what does that mean? If people are unwilling to earn money, the central bank is already on the brink of collapse. If there aren't enough people to want the money, to work for it, it is very hard for people to have demand of it. If we are able to switch into another currency, it is much harder for the governments to control using the currency. That is why they wanted to have a cashless society. If you can't control money by just the physical method, all you have to do is to transition into the cashless society, and when you're out of control, it just shuts down the energy and your money is gone. That's the problem. And that is another cases where we talk about the bank when you owe money from the bank. So check this out. Check this quote. If you owe the bank $100, that is your problem. If you owe the bank 100 million, that's the bank's problem. Why? Because if you go through a certain courses where there are people falling victims to the scams of loaning money, and their accounts which the scammer was used to exploit their credit, which they have their own quota, and the scammer, for no further evidence, they are able to lend more money than the victims were allowed to at all. For example, if you slightly zoom in, you can see which is called 信用限額, which is the quote of the credit you are allowed to loan at the maximum. But the problem is, how is that victim possible to loan this much money? I mean, the scammer managed to squeeze this user this much money when the bank knows it. This is a problem. The discrepancy should be considered the bank's problem, because when the bank knew that you are owing the money more than the bank expected, they wouldn't lend more money for you, which means the excess is the bank's fault, and they should not have the qualification of returning, of chasing it, because ultimately the bank lent the money more than they would expect to do so. So what about the victims? To a certain extent, if they were not returning the money, the redundant amount, for example, if your quota was like 100,000 and then the scammer managed to squeeze your account to loan more than 500,000, for example, then the 400,000 in excess is not your fault, because the bank should know that. They should have blocked your transaction. But why would bank being that faulty? Ultimately, the money has no intrinsic value. If they do not attempt to repay, that is at your mercy, at the victim's mercy. So let's go to the next further point, because let's go through the inflation problem too. if we are able to control the people's activity through inflation, for example, taxes, debt, or other things, the government, for example, laundering the money towards Ukraine and then sending it back to yourself. Even more, uh, just keep printing money. As the previous session, I talked about Venezuela Bolívares, and I do have 3 of them. Let me give you and take a look about it. So, give me a few seconds on enlarging the thing and show you the banknotes I have. Okay, just back from that here. So this one is already obsolete. 100 Bolívares. If it wasn't for the value of collection, for example, the Zimbabwe's $100 trillion, if it wasn't for collectibles purposes, I don't think that you would want it at all, because it has no value. If you wanted it today, nobody would want it other than those collectors. So, what is the problem? If we are able to make people realize that all the debts they have ended up are not their fault, and they have decided to no longer want it, and reduce the amount of work to appropriate level until the government finally realizes that the debt, the indebted, can no longer be used against them, we would be winning for that matter. So how can we make the central bank go bankrupt? First one is by making people lose interest about money. Second, by having the government being on purpose incompetent. For example, printing the $1 trillion coin. How will that $1 trillion coin be valuable at all? You must have a government that will ever have the $1 trillion equivalent of items for you after redeeming it. But when you bought this $1 trillion coin, what are you expecting to get from the other countries? Or if you come back to the United States, will they be giving back the equivalent value? It is not going to happen. I can see that. Even if the debt clock, the debt ceiling is already removed for a while because they wanted to print more and more money. The $1 trillion coin, they just refuse to let you get what you wanted. It is not a solution. And I have been talking about this, I used to, and those people, local people, thought that minting a $1 trillion coin, buying it, and the state would actually give you back the $1 trillion coin. It is impractical, to be honest. It would even worsen the inflation that already has today. So when we have governments minting $1 trillion coin or just making the inflation uncontrollable, people will no longer want their own national currency because there are no trust. It is not backed by a government that is reliable. And then, what do you expect from the people when your currency is not reliable at any point? Ultimately, people will need to create their own currency in order to curb this kind of crisis of their own, controlled by the people who use it and those who produce things to make the currency valuable. Bitcoin is a result. I mean, is a result of the crisis that happened on 2008. As a concept, they have constituted of the currency creation of people's own, bringing back the power to the people who deserves. For the blockchain, in order to prevent people from manipulating it to remove the record whatsoever to control the monetary system as a whole. That is why Bitcoin's source code is open for anyone who would want to create their own currency. Or further, if you go to the coinmarketcap.com, there are thousands of listings in terms of active cryptocurrencies and assets that is traded every day around the world. Bitcoin's design is designed to be actually great. That is why the government has been going after the Bitcoin system, the cryptocurrency, the entirety, because it works. That is why you see when you register an account attempting to do so, they will always ask you to verify your identity. But the problem is doing that online has a risk of your identity being exposed, because there is a chance that the one who is managing your sensitive data to be treacherous towards those people who don't like. There is even a risk that if you are banned from somewhere similarly and they told that they don't want you to be able to use their website or the entire legal system, when you pass it the KYC, which is know your customers, when they review it, you just get blocked and your account would just get banned. That is not going to work because it is too powerful. Because Bitcoin is just like the fiat money. Both sides has no intrinsic value, but Bitcoin or the entire cryptocurrency ecosystem is uncontrollable by the government. If people are able to design a currency that is able to be controlled by everyone, not just some certain people who created it, it is impossible to control the world by controlling the money. In short, if you control the money, although if you can control the world, you must control every single currency possible that is substantial and demanded. If people are able to lose the interest on the fiat currency, it is a matter of time before central bank goes bankrupt because their money is no longer valued by the people who they will need to make it useful. Thanks for watching. There's too many of the messed up, and I think it is worth mentioning that the increase of piracy is just like this manner. Also, the cashless society. If there are enough people got banned from the cashless system, it is going to have the consequence of your currency having no sufficient value to keep it up. Thanks for watching, by the way.